Well, nuclear energy may have somewhat of a checkered past, but today the British government gave the go-ahead for the construction of a new generation of nuclear power plants. And Atomic Energy of Canada is amongst those being considered for the contracts to build the multi-billion-dollar reactors. The announcement out of Europe adds to a renewed momentum behind nuclear as a panacea for the world's energy needs. And Niall McGee has this report.
A lot has changed in the past 25 years in nuclear power. During the late 70s and early 80s, the industry was literally melting down. Near catastrophic accidents at 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl caused the construction of new power plants to grind to a halt. But thanks to, of all things, its new image as a green fuel that generates little or no greenhouse gas emissions, nuclear is back.
Given a choice between continuing to spend money on, larger and larger coal-fired plants or nuclear, and the evidence is pretty clear, you go nuclear.
And that's exactly what Europe has been doing. While nuclear generates 16% of the world's electricity, it's more than double that in Europe. In France, it's 85%. Now the UK government has its eye on a new generation of nuclear plants to replace its aging crop. Globally, 35 other reactors are being built, many of those in China and India, where the thirst for energy is near insatiable. But none of this would be happening if crude oil fundamentals were different.
If oil was at $10, nobody would have this conversation, because price, as soon as prices move up, that becomes a signaling mechanism, and then all of a sudden the capital expenditure they have to put into nuclear plants, which is extremely high, all of a sudden becomes economic.
People expect oil prices to stay high for the indefinite future, and that can justify the huge investment involved in nuclear.
So who is benefiting from the resurgence in nuclear power? The uranium producers, for one. But while thousands of companies are looking for the commodity, only a handful are actually in production. Canadian companies Cameco and Uranium One are among the few, but both have had production problems, and investing in either has been far from a sure thing. But the big money comes from the actual construction of these nuclear power plants, which can cost up to $5 billion apiece. The big players in the sector, GE, Areva Group of France, and Canadian company Atomic Energy of Canada. Those eager to embrace nuclear still have to contend with a pickle or two. Massive cost overruns in building reactors are typical. Enthusiasm for nuclear is also dependent on oil prices remaining at elevated levels. And naturally, the industry hopes the accidents of the past will remain but a footnote in the colourful history of nuclear power. Niall McGee, Business News Network, Toronto.
We've got Niall here, actually. Even if the UK goes ahead with this, there's still some big challenges.
Massive challenges, Pat, in building these reactors. The biggest reactor in the world, I think we have a photograph of it, is currently being built in Western Finland. And the price of this is just astronomical, almost $5 billion, Pat. Way over budget, though. They expected it would originally be about half of this. And this has been keenly watched in Europe because it's the first plant in Europe in more than 10 years, and it will be, when it's finished, the biggest plant in the world.
We also had the challenge of uranium prices.
Yeah, I mean, this is interesting, actually. You would think uranium price, the high price of uranium, would be a major deterrent, although the price has come off. But with uranium, unlike natural gas, the actual commodity is a tiny part of the overall cost structure when you're building a plant. The uranium commodity itself is pretty negligible, unlike natural gas, which actually accounts for about 75% of the overall cost mix. With uranium, it's only about 5% because building the actual infrastructure is so much more expensive.